So, Dr. Bob, we're here today talking about the mayoral race in Richmond, which I think is one of the most interesting races because it seems like it's a toss-up. Is that your sense as well?
I think it's the most challenging race, actually, of all the races in Virginia right now to scoop out, largely for a couple of reasons. One has to do with the nature of how the mayor is selected. In order to win the mayoral race, it's not just the most votes. You have to win 5 of the 9 districts. And so that makes it challenging to understand who's going to win 5 of the 9 districts. And then secondly, I think we have, I think 4 serious contenders in the race. And we really don't know exactly how that's going to play out. Certainly, LeVar Stoney, the mayor, is the incumbent. He's had the most money. He's been on television the most. But at the same time, he has a strong challenge from Kim Gray. Alexis Rogers has had very impressive grassroots organizing. And Justin Griffin certainly will run well in a couple of parts of the city, I think.
So explain to us what happened in 2016, how LeVar Stoney was able to pull this off outright without having to go to a runoff.
Well, that in 2016 was a pretty fascinating race itself because you had LeVar, who was the young candidate, you might say, supported by the local Democratic Party. You had Jack Berry, a well-known Richmonder who had been supported very strongly in the Richmond business community. And then, of course, you had Joe Morrissey, a person with his own constituency that's quite strong in some parts of the city, but at the same time was seen as a candidate that both the business community and I think part of the local media establishment didn't want there. And so Morrissey was the most polarizing candidate. And LeVar actually wound up winning 5 districts. And I think he won for 2 reasons. First, he had the Democratic Party endorsement, the local party endorsement, which meant that all the sample ballots that people received on election day in a city that votes over 80% Democratic had LeVar Stoney's name on it. And then secondly, he was able to win the 5 districts because of a huge turnout by VCU students in the 2nd district, where a lot of people thought Jack Berry was going to carry that district. But LeVar eventually carried it because 1,100 VCU students turned out to vote against Donald Trump, I think, primarily. And while they were there, they also elected the mayor by going down that Democratic ballot and pulling the lever for Mayor Stoney as well.
So are you expecting that to happen this go around where a bunch of college students are going to come out for LeVar Stoney, and has the Democratic Party endorsed him?
Well, that's really the unknown about the turnout of young voters. Certainly, we're hearing that a lot of young voters have turned out nationally and have turned out in Virginia. But I'm not sure you have the same concentration in that precinct outside of VCU that you may have had in 2016, because I think there's probably fewer students who are actually on campus right now than before. So that's one thing that happened. Secondly, LeVar does have the support of Governor Northam, and that will be on the sample ballots for sure. But the local Democratic Party, knowing that there are so many Democrats in this race, have not given a uniform endorsement to one candidate.
Okay, so what districts do you think we should be watching this go around?
Well, I think it's going to be really fascinating, actually, in almost all of the districts. I think LeVar, the mayor, is going to have a tough time in District 1. I think District 2, he may have a tough time as well. I expect Kim Gray to do fairly well in both of those districts. District 3 could be very, very competitive over on the north side. And then I think everyone is going to be watching District 8, where you have Amy Wentz running as a challenger against Reva Trammell. And Reva is supported by Governor Wilder and Joe Morrissey. But at the same time, LeVar is supported by, Governor Northam, and Amy Wentz is linked, I think, a little more strongly with LeVar. And so that district is going to be really important in terms of the mayor's race as well as the city council race. So this is going to be a fascinating race, actually, in almost all of the districts, because we really can't tell. We've had a couple of polls that have really been, I wouldn't say gold standard polls as far as I could tell. They've both shown LeVar with a slight lead, one with a slight lead, one with a substantial lead. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of support for Kim Gray in certain parts of the city. And we've seen Alexis Rogers, who certainly has had a lot of grassroots organizing. She didn't raise as much money as LeVar, but she raised it from a lot of people. And she has a lot of signs up in the city right now. She's not that well known, but she's been very impressive. And then finally, Justin Griffin, who became a little bit known because of his opposition to Navy Hill. In certain parts of the city, I think in District 4 in particular, is going to have maybe 10, 15, 20% support. So that could also take away votes from somebody. So that's the other thing we have to figure out is this it's almost like a calculus game here about who takes away votes from what person. It seems to me that every vote that Justin Griffin gets really is a vote that Kim Gray would have wanted. That's sort of the anti-Stoney vote. At the same time, Alexis Rogers, her constituency, you might say, is a little bit left of LeVar Stoney. She's the progressive in the race, whereas LeVar had been the progressive in the race in 2016. So the votes that come to Alexis Rogers may well come out of Mayor Stoney's camp as well. So that's why I think there's a lot of anxiety in all the camps about this race. Nobody's quite sure how it's going to work out. And in some ways, it's very refreshing that we don't have a poll who's telling us who's going to win.
So we keep talking about to win on election night, you have to win 5 districts. Well, let's explain how that system works, because I think there's a lot of folks that don't understand that this is like an electoral college system in the city of Richmond.
Yeah, it's a lot of people really don't understand the election process in the city for mayor. And it's a complicated process, so that's understandable. I've talked to a few people just in the past couple of days who I would have thought would have known, but they don't. And so as the election process, the mayor is not elected in Richmond because that person has received the most votes. The mayor is elected only if they are able to carry 5 of the 9 districts. So in the race that happens tomorrow, if only 2 candidates win districts, we'll have a mayor at the end of the evening. Because what will happen is that one of those candidates would have to win 5 districts. If, however, a third or a fourth candidate win districts, there's actually the possibility that we won't have a mayor in the first round of the elections. So, of course, if nobody wins 5 districts, the 2 highest vote getters then come and compete in a runoff a month later. So that's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow. As I said, if only 2 candidates win, mathematically, one of them has to win 5 districts. If let's say only LeVar Stoney and Kim Gray win districts, one of them will be the mayor. However, if Alexis Rogers wins districts, if Justin Griffin wins a district, at the end of the night, it's a possibility that we would have a runoff a month later. And that runoff doesn't come between the 2 people who've won the most districts. It comes between the 2 people who have the most votes. So that gets even a little more complicated. And then we'll go through the whole process 30 days or 45 days from now again.
So that, I think, adds a little more to people's approach when they're heading to the voting booth in terms of, okay, I'm in the first district, I'm pretty sure this is going to go for Kim Gray. So my vote, like if I wanted to go for Alexis Rogers or something, doesn't really matter because this district I know is going to go for Kim Gray. But at the end of the day, that's not true, because if it goes to a runoff, then they go to the popular vote, and your vote could actually matter.
Exactly. That so that's what's a little odd about it. That in order to win, you have to win 5 districts. It doesn't matter how many votes you get. But in order to get into the runoff, if nobody's won 5 districts, you have to be one of the 2 highest vote getters in that front. And the other complication, I think, right now is that we've seen a lot of early voting in Richmond, and we've seen some distinctions in where that early voting has taken place. The more affluent parts of the city has had a larger percentage of registered voters vote early than we've seen in some of the less affluent parts of the city. So when the candidates are really thinking about how they're organizing for tomorrow's election right now, what they're doing in the last minute, it would certainly be worth their while to focus on those districts where fewer people actually have come out and voted early right now.
Are we talking
Because,
about the 8th and the 9th district or the East
yeah, I
End?
mean,
What are
it
you
could be
thinking?
the 8th, the 9th, the 7th, anything on the south side, maybe even as well, because, what you've seen is that, the early voting places haven't been totally distributed equally overall across the city. Sometimes it's hard to get to some of the early voting places if you don't have your own method of transportation. So by and large, I think we're going to see a higher turnout tomorrow in certain parts of the city, whereas other parts of the city may be well over 50% and maybe over 2/3 of the registered voters have already cast their ballots.
Interesting. In terms of signs, I spend all of my time pretty much in the first and second districts, sometimes heading over to Church Hill, and I've only seen like Gray and Griffin signs and Alexis Rogers. I've seen a lot of Alexis Rogers. I haven't seen any LeVar Stoney signs. What are you seeing on the south side?
On the south side, the signs are primarily Alexis Rogers, Justin Griffin, in many of the places that I've seen, which are sort of the more affluent parts of the south side. I think what you see is that Stoney hasn't relied so much on signs. I think what they've done, first of all, they've done a lot of TV ads and really good television ads, I think. If you see the ads that LeVar is running, some of the things that might make him less popular in, let's say, District 1, I think are going to be very popular in parts of the city. He is, certainly proud of the fact that he, took the monuments down, got the monuments removed from Monument Avenue. In certain parts of the city, people are arguing that he did that wrong. He shouldn't have done it. There's been too much chaos that has surrounded that. But in other parts of the city, I think it's going to be very popular. And so I've been very impressed with the television ads of the mayor. It looks to me like he's used that money pretty wisely. At the same time, Alexis Rogers has been on television with another impressive ad. And Kim Gray actually has been a little less visible on television. So she's raised about $500,000, about half of what LeVar raised, a little more, I think, or about the same as Alexis Rogers. And clearly they're using a lot of mailers. And so what Kim Gray is attempting to do is to put together a coalition that crosses, you might say, political party lines. While there are not that many Republicans in Richmond, Kim Gray is certainly trying to use appeals that would be appealing to Republicans as well as Democrats. She's arguing against real estate tax increases, basically saying LeVar is going to come in and raise the taxes, and trying to do things that she would give her, I think, some crossover appeal, which she believes may be very helpful to her tomorrow.
Any predictions, Dr. Bob, heading into?
This is a race where it's really too tough to predict. I think everyone believes that the favorite certainly remains the mayor, but no one quite knows how well Kim Gray is going to do in the less affluent parts of the city, and no one quite knows whether all this grassroots organizing for Alexis Rogers will actually turn into a victory in a district on that front. So again, I would say that conventional wisdom is that Mayor Stoney is still the favorite, but at the same time, there's a lot more uncertainty now than people might have thought about this election 8 or 9 months ago, before the pandemic and before all the issues that arose with the monuments.
Well, I certainly look forward to covering it tomorrow, and I'll be in touch with you to see what you're seeing as the results start coming in.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Melissa.